I'm Kathleen Kapkara. I'm from Trinity Church, and I am in charge of Christian formation for children, youth, and adults. I've had the pleasure of presenting the Bible stories everyone should know using the Godly Play method for our summertime small groups at Trinity. This story is one of the last stories I'll be telling you, and definitely the last story in the desert. After this, we'll have 2 more stories before we change into our fall curriculum, which will be from Illustrated Ministries. We'll have a video to watch and things to discuss in our small group, and I hope you will consider continuing with the small groups in the fall and maybe inviting some of your friends. But now to the story. You all know by now this is the desert, and you might even remember that this is the city of Ur, where Abram and Sarai were first from. It later became the city of Babylon, which is what it is now in this part of the story, many, many years later. This is the city of Jerusalem. There were great walls around the city. And this is the temple that's inside the walls of the city of Jerusalem. And here are some of the people of God who lived in Jerusalem. They believed that God lived in the temple, but they also thought that it was the only place where you could pray to God. The people believed that the walls around the city of Jerusalem would keep them safe from everything. But then the Assyrians came. There was great fighting. Some people starved. It was a terrible time as the Assyrians attacked the city. But then the Assyrians went away. Later, the Babylonians came, and the king of Babylon wanted the city of Jerusalem for himself. And so the city was attacked. The soldiers broke down the walls. They set fire to the temple, and it started to burn. And then the soldiers marched the people away from the city to take them captive in Babylon. Only a few were left in the land. As the soldiers led the people through the desert, they had to walk when the soldiers said to walk. They had to eat when the soldiers said to eat. They could only sleep when the soldiers told them they could sleep. They had to march, march, march. The people looked back on the city of Jerusalem and saw the burning embers and smoke rising from the temple, and they wondered if they would ever go back home again. As they marched with the soldiers toward Babylon, the people were sad and tired, and some even died. But the people of God could not go home. They were in exile. They hung their harps on the willow trees and sang sad songs. They missed Jerusalem and the temple so much, they even faced toward Jerusalem when they said their prayers. But as they gathered and read the sacred stories from Scripture and said the prayers and sang the holy songs, the people realized that God was with them here too. God was not just in the temple. And then the king of Babylon let the people have some freedom. They were allowed to work. Some of them set up shops, and some of them even worked for the king. But everyone was surprised when the king of Persia came and took over the city of Babylon. And now some of the people were allowed to go home. A few went with Ezra. And they helped to begin to rebuild the temple. And then more people were allowed to go home. And some went with Nehemiah. And they started to build the walls again around the city of Jerusalem. And then the people were no longer in exile. Everyone could go home. But you know what happened? Some people decided not to go home. They had realized now that God's presence was everywhere, and God was with them in this strange and foreign land, and so they decided to stay. Now I wonder what part of this long story you like the best. I wonder what part is about you, or where you might be in the story. I wonder if you've ever felt like you've been in exile. I hope that you will talk about these things and discuss some other things in your small group. God bless you, and I'll see you next week. Only 2 more stories, and then we will start looking at the Beatitudes from Illustrated Ministries. See you soon.